Unfortunately, she'd discovered that Matt's death had indeed been an accident, and his twin sister Maggie had not been in a fit emotional state to talk. It had ended up being fine, although it hurt like hell, because in discovering the truth about Matt's death, she'd also walked into a doomsday cult. That had led to picking up 2 kids, Andrew and Andrea Tasman. The cult calling themselves the Evolved had consumed their parents. 6 months and several adventures later, Cora had traveled to Italy, Australia, and Greece on the credit card of one Madame Antonova, the vampire matriarch who had sired her, and in whose technical employ she was technically not an assassin. Cora had ethical issues with being an assassin. The world didn't give a damn about her scruples. Cora was now hunting for the stone, the semi-mythical figure at the heart of the Evolved. She planned to end the doomsday cult once and for all. She'd caught up to the stone in Greece only weeks before, where she'd wounded them before being knocked out by the self-sacrifice ritual conducted by their second-in-command, Chris. The stone had gotten away, as all supervillains do on occasion, and Cora had spent a couple of weeks regrouping and resting at one of Madame Antonova's many properties worldwide. This one was in London, where Andrea and Andrew stayed hidden from their erstwhile guardians and current hunters. Andrea was the one the Evolved wanted most. At the tender age of 11, she was a prodigy who could ward on the molecular level. Her ability to protect DNA from mutation made her the Evolved's #1 most wanted. It wasn't surprising, since their ultimate goal was nuclear Armageddon, with a magical supremacist society rising from the ashes. The head honchos wanted to come out of it without extra heads. Andrew was older by a year and a half and had a magically perfect memory. This had proven invaluable in their escape and subsequent botheration of the cult. However, it was unfortunately less flashy than his sister's powers and was a source of resentment on the kid's part. Cora had never been sure about having kids, but unexpectedly became the de facto mother to these 2. Although she'd been absent more often than not over the last months, this and her attempts to be supportive and loving while she was there was more parental love than either of their biological parents had given them. Also, she was falling in love with her trainer, Jack. The vampire turned in the Roaring Twenties taught at Madame Antonova's Academy for Young Vampires in the Appalachians. He cut a fine figure in coattails, and about anything else besides. Yeah, life was weird. Today in Copenhagen, so near the amusement park that she still heard the excited screams of riders, she was trailing an unwilling informant. The list of people who knew about the stone, who knew about the person, not just the cult legend, was short. But once you knew where to look, they weren't hard to find. They were proving very hard to talk to, though. Much like Gillian, the green witch whom Cora had hunted down in the Australian outback only weeks before. Gillian had been the Evolved's primary plant creator until she'd defected and gone into hiding for her safety. The stone was a master of intimidation. The last person Cora had tracked down had taken the cliched cracked-tooth cyanide pill rather than spill the beans. They had been defiant to the end, spouting bullshit about how the necromantic lord would raise them on the last day when the skies rained fire and the rivers ran with blood. Your standard doomsday crap. This person? With this person, Cora had believed she stood a chance. She'd gotten in contact as quietly as possible and had received an affirmative message in return. They were willing to talk, as long as they took the strictest protective measures. Cora had followed their directions to the letter, leaving nothing to chance. In return for all her conscientious hard work, they'd ghosted her. Bastard, or bitch, or whatever. Now she was tracking them down the hard way. Wending her way through Copenhagen's more heavily trafficked streets as time went by, still on their tail after she'd zeroed in on them hours before, she inexorably approached her prey. It was the worst.